Morning. This is the Road to Concord. I am your host, Joe Bakanovic. We are waiting for, there it is, Bill. In. Got a real class today. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. You gotta get in here, get sit down. All right. Y'all quiet down. Cut off the noise. There we go. All right. Jeez, man, I swear. Some of you kids. As I said, this is the Road to Concord. I'm your professor slash host, Joe Bakanovic. You are watching us on freedomnetworks.com. Networks with an X. Networx. Normally, we're live cast on Facebook. Not today. You can find us on Twitch. That's the feed that is on Freedom Networks. So there's no reason to go to Twitch. You just go to Freedom Networks. Same. Upper left-hand corner, FN TV. Click the button. You watch us live. We are also on Rumble. If you go to Rumble, you're going to need an account. You got to search for the channel. It's The Road to Concord, all one word for the channel, not the video. You still find the video, but all you're going to find is the current video. If you find the channel, please subscribe. And the way Rumble works, if you like the show, please hit the up button on as much as you can, because, you know, our little troll Dodo cop, he's out there downing everything he can. That the way all the logarithms work, that hurts the show and spreads it on Rumble. But we're on Rumble, The Road to Concord, one word. You'll find us. If you see us with spaces, The Road to Concord with the spaces, that's a particular video. That's an individual video. The channel is theroadtoconcord.com. Subscribe to the channel. You'll never lose us. Search for The Road to Concord. You'll find every video we've posted. It'll get confusing quick on you that way. Search for the channel. That'll tell you what the new upcoming show is all the time. If you prefer podcasts, you can find us on Podbean, BEAN as in November, iHeart and Spotify. Just search for The Road to Concord. You'll find us on those three places. You can download, listen to the podcasts. I upload the podcast at the end of every show, each and every day. And if you like, you can email joe@theroadtoconcord.com. And then the phone number is 229-469-0335. I got a little bit of a recap today. Then we will actually have a real class today. It's almost going to be a Teaching Tuesday, Founding Fathers Friday. Real quick apology. I'm not supposed to do this, but I do need to apologize for Charlie since I beat him silly and he can't talk right now. But this right here, this light, I don't know what happened in the studio, but that light has gotten brighter and it's messing with the lighting in here. So it's annoying the snot out of me. So if it bugs any of you, I apologize. Like I said, I beat Charlie to within an inch of his life for that. He's over there trying to recover. Aaron, you'd be happy, proud of me. Like I said, I beat the snot out of him today for that. He can't apologize for himself. A little bit of recap. I've got a picture. I've got to remake my helmet. Black Crow Studios stole this on me. But whenever we used to do conspiracy theory days, that was my tinfoil helmet. So if y'all can't match that, y'all got to get to work. You got to do a better job. So I found that when I was looking for another photograph. If you'll remember, if you were here with us yesterday, you might have heard me tell you that one of my mentors, one of the guys who taught me how to do what it is I've been doing for a living for the last 21 years, was a Hollywood special effects artist. You know, I was talking to you about how he said they couldn't make the Bigfoot costume in that Patterson Gimlin video. That's Andy right there with his back to you, with the hat on, holding up the gun. He's helping to make, that's another one of the Terminator movie robots that he was in on. He made this one as well. He and the guy that's in the screen there. So Andy's the one that you can really see. He's in the jeans, black shirt, jacket with his back to us. That's my buddy. He's one of my mentors. He taught me that right there is his picture. That's him doing his thing. So like I said, when he tells me they couldn't have made that costume, that was enough for me. That's one of the biggest reasons that, sold on the Bigfoot hoax, Jack. Because a man who used to make a living making props for Steven Spielberg says he couldn't have done that. With all the money in the world, he couldn't have done that. So that kind of made me, yeah, that's where I'm supposed to be. Anyhow, we do have a class for you today. I don't think we'll get into any fallacies or any logic. We're going to do a little bit of reading. It's going to be a hodgepodge class. We're going to kind of read, and then we're going to jump back and forth, make comments as we go. We're setting up for something. Next Friday, probably the one after it. 2 weeks from now. we're going to start taking a look at the Declaration of Independence in depth. I mean, we're going to study it. But before we get to the Declaration of Independence, we got to do some groundwork. It's like with everything else. If you're going to be in class with me, I'm an acquired taste. I know this. You got to spend time with me. The other thing you have to do is you've got to be in class all the time. Otherwise, the longer you go without getting in class or going back and catching up, the more and more the things we say are going to sound silly to you as a newcomer, but the rest of the class is going to go, oh, we're there. We got it. We understand, because we know all the stuff that's come before this. At some point, for all of you regular class members, we're going to have to go back and start doing some review and start all over again with some of this stuff. Maybe not all of it, but we're going to have to do a little bit of focused and dedicated and selected recap in certain areas for those who are catching up. But for today, we're going to start with something. I was going to start with the Declaration today, but I realized there's a lot of groundwork we got to deal with. The Rights of the Colonists by Samuel Adams, November 20th, 1772. Remember, Declaration of Independence, 1776, so we're 4 years early. We're going to go through this little article that he posted in a local paper. This is important because part of what he's writing about here is referenced in the Declaration of Independence, almost word for word. Gee, golly gee whiz. Who'd have thunk it? Starts out here. This is Samuel Adams. Says first, we're going to go right into this, folks. It's class time. We got a class today. First, natural rights of the colonists as men. It says, let me see if I can fix something here. I'm trying to keep at you with a few other things going on here. All right. Among the natural rights of the colonists are these. First, a right to life. Secondly, to liberty. Thirdly, to property, together with the right to support and defend them in the best manner they can. These are evident branches of, rather than deductions from, the duty of self-preservation, commonly called the first law of nature. I'm going to stop here. We're going to be doing a lot of, I'll narrate Adams. We'll jump back and forth. We're going to stop and make commentary all the way through this. So first things first, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness instead of property. There was a reason for that. And it had nothing to do with slavery. We're going to get to it. We, over the next few weeks, are going to start with the Declaration of Independence. It is time to start looking at the principles, the ideals, what was it that the Founding Fathers were really arguing? And what were they aiming for? And how did they miss it? Not only what caused them to miss it, but how far off the mark were they? How far out how outside the V ring were they for you shooters? So we're going to go over this. So Samuel Adams, who I posted your real quick. I should have done this beginning. I posted your show notes in the comments section, both on Rumble and on Twitch, the Freedom Network's feed. There's a link. It goes to the blog page that supports this show. TheRoadToConcord.com is our blog page. There's a show notes section there. It's a PDF. Pretty much I copied Samuel Adams' essay that we're going to look at today. I copied it into a PDF. I linked it to where I got it from. Full credit for everybody. I don't take people's credit from people for the work they did. I link you back to that, all that stuff. Give you credit for it. And I made it so you can download it and keep it if you want it. And then there's a couple of other little things in there too that if we have time, we'll get to. It'll be interesting reading because it pertains to today's show and class to show you that nothing's changed. We're still stuck in the world of Ecclesiastes. Nothing new under the sun, Joe. Yeah, I know. Tell me about it. So, show notes. You can go there and get this stuff. Back to Adams. He's talking about rights, liberty, property. Then he says you also have a right to support your property and defend it and your liberty and your life in the best manner you can. He says these are evident branches of rather than deductions from. In other words, this is self-evident. You don't have to sit there and noodle your way through it and say, well, because of this means that means this means that. Oh, okay, there you go. You got a right to life. No. He's saying this is evident from the first law of nature, self-preservation. So he's trying to tell you this is self-evident. A rational person shouldn't have to be convinced that these things are real or true. So he continues, Sam Adams again. All men have a right to remain in a state of nature as long as they please, and in case of intolerable oppression, civil or religious, to leave the society they belong to and enter into another. Stop again. This is the source of whenever one government does something to the point where we can no longer tolerate it, we have the right to leave that government, set up a new one, we'll leave one society, enter another, even if we have to create it. For those who are out there with this sovereign man stuff, I'm a sovereign citizen. Okay, you're right. Samuel Adams just told you you have a right to be a sovereign citizen. But he said in order to do that, you have to leave the society you're in, which puts you back in a state of nature, which means if you're a sovereign citizen, do not claim anything that comes from the society that you're in. Don't claim any rights whatsoever, no privileges, no demands on it. You don't belong to it anymore. That's what he's telling us. So those people who claim sovereign citizen, they don't always have their full argument underneath them. Some of them do, very few. Sam Adams continues, when men enter into society, it is by voluntary consent, and they have a right to demand and insist upon the performance of such conditions and previous limitations as form an equitable original compact. What? In other words, I'm a member of this society by choice. I volunteer. I do this of my own free will. And if the social compact that forms our society starts to get off the rails, I have the right to demand to get back to the original agreement, the original compact. If you don't, I have the right to abolish you. If we helped make you, I have a right to abolish you or amend you. And if necessary, what's implied in these 3 paragraphs so far is the use of force. Support and defend them in best manner they can. Now, you got a lot of things to do before you can revert to the use of force. This is why we're going to go back and go through the groundwork that led up to the Declaration of Independence. I want to see what it was that they were doing before they used the use of force, because this country thinks it's at that point now. We have a few more things available to us that they did not. We need to use them before we try to even think about going there. Sam Adams continues, every natural right not expressly given up or from the nature of a social compact necessarily ceded remains. Now, Thomas Jefferson's going to come along later and say, Sam, you need some correction to that statement. You cannot give up a natural right. All you can do is limit your exercise of it and give that authority over to the state, so long as the state exercises your authority in agreement with the social compact. This is where Sam Adams starts. Our current government is in total, complete, 100% violation of the social compact we know as the Constitution. Our federal government today, as we know it, is illegitimate. Period. Done. Say, well, Lincoln changed it. No, he didn't. There was no Constitutional Convention. There was no Article 5. There was nothing. The 14th Amendment. No, it didn't. In order to change the social compact, you have to knowingly, full on, hey, all you states out there, we're changing the plan. It's no longer going to be the same thing anymore. They didn't do that. So, well, Joe, they snuck it in by hook and by crook, and now it's law. No, it's not. Adams just told you, if you do it by hook and by crook and you don't do it according to the compact, it's not law. Well, he didn't say that, Joe. Yes, he did. If you understand concept. Gee, earlier this week I was telling people, don't get hooked up on the letter of the letter of the law, just the specific words. Look at the concepts. Adams just told you, if you have these rights, and if the government does not want to, or the society does not want to abide by the compact upon which it was created, you can change it by any means available. Starting to see why we are wanting to study this. It's getting us close to why they used force in the Declaration. But this is 1772. There's form, and this is not the beginning. They've been at this for decades. So let's see where he continues here. This is second slide. Sam Adams continues. He picks up again. All positive and civil laws. Stop. Joe's reading this last night and says, positive law. Whoa, Obama. Hello. What? Yeah, the end of class. Hold on to this second slide. Mr. Adams just clicked over something or tripped over it or whatever. He addressed it. This is the fight. He's hitting at progressives. This is just old dead white men. This essay is appropriate today. It's alive. It's living. It's as forceful today as it was back then. I will show you at the end of class, or at the end of this essay. So Adams says, all positive and civil laws should conform as far as possible to the law of natural reason and equity. If they don't, they're not laws. We've heard this before from the founding fathers. I've read you their quotes. Where do you think these ideas all came from? Sam Adams. No, Sam Adams is getting them from other people too. He's drawing largely in this letter, this essay that he's writing, he's reacting to the King of England, George, and to Parliament, and he's drawing largely from John Locke and John Locke's treatise on government. And in this essay, this open letter that Samuel Adams wrote that we're reading today, he cited the parts of Locke that were admonishing the King George, saying, you're illegitimate yourself because you took the crown wrongly from the predecessor. So what's going on here in the background is that Samuel Adams is citing something that's as prevalent in the colonists' case as it is to the average Englishman's case against their current king. He's resting on ideals and principles. He's making a reasoned argument to support the actions he's demanding. In which case, this is just, hey, treat the colonists the same way you do the English subjects. So he's making he's doing something that the American right today, conservatives, we refuse to do. We think we do it, but we don't. The left argues its ideology very well. The right no longer does. We just like, liberty! Yeah, that's a thing. That you're not talking about the foundation that goes under it. That's what Freedom Networks is supposed to be doing, is teaching the principles of liberty, the foundation of liberty. It's not teaching liberty, it's teaching the foundations upon which it's built, the ideals, the principles. How do we get there? How do we support it? How do we argue it? How do we say this is the better way? What idea do we use to win the heart and soul of the person that we're trying to lead? The left does this very well. Free stuff! No responsibility. Feels good, do it. We'll take care of you. We'll make the rich man pay. That's their ideology. They never talk about the goal. Eternal slavery where I get to be the boss. Well, the goal here is liberty. What's the ideal? That's what Sam Adams is doing. He's arguing the ideal. So he continues. He says, all positive and civil law should conform as far as possible to the law of natural reason and equity. As neither reason requires nor religion permits the contrary, every man living in or out of a state of civil society has a right peaceably and quietly to worship God according to the dictates of his conscience. Conscience. Remember I told you the First Amendment, what the founders were arguing was freedom of conscience, not just speech or religion. You're going to understand why they should not have changed the language. And we will address why they did in the coming weeks. It's time to start looking at our founding documents hard. We've spent enough time getting to know the founders. It's time to look at what they did and why. So he's focusing on conscience. This would be not only freedom of religion, but freedom of speech as well. It says just and true liberty, equal and impartial liberty. He's citing John Locke. In matters spiritual and temporal meaning eternal, is a thing that all men are clearly entitled to by the eternal and immutable laws of God and nature, as well as by the law of nations and well-grounded municipal laws, which must have their foundation in the former. Let's go through this again. I'm sorry, spiritual and temporal. Temporal meaning earthly. My bad. Let's say, in matters dealing with God and man, is a thing that all men are clearly entitled to. What is true liberty and impartial liberty? By the eternal and immutable laws of God and nature. Ha! God and nature and nature's God. See, Jefferson just penned it one way. Samuel Adams 4 years earlier just put it another way. The concept was already in the body politic. In other words, the population already understood the concept of nature and nature's God, or God and God's nature. That goes all the way back to St. Thomas Aquinas, or Aquinas, or however they want to pronounce it. That goes way back. It's not a deist's idea. That's a Christian philosopher's idea. and it comes from the book of Romans, chapters 1 and 2. And when we get a little further into this study on the Declaration of Independence, I'm going to introduce you to John Locke and to some of the things he said and believed and argued that our founding fathers grabbed onto. And you're going to see things that you were never taught in school that are right there in the background of our Constitution and Declaration. It's like what we were doing with the Bible here recently. You got to know the background that's not written because everybody knew it at the time. That's what we're doing right now. What's the background behind the Declaration that everybody knew that we today, 240, 50 years, 60 years, or whatever later, don't know anymore? So nature and nature, God and nature, as well as the law of nations, international law. International law, law of nations. The Declaration of Independence is a legal document written in the form of an international complaint at the time. Here we go. Sam Adams is already thinking that way. And well-grounded municipal laws, those civil laws, laws by man, which must have their foundation in the former. Civil laws must be grounded both in international law, but more importantly, God's law, natural law. Those are the only immutable laws. Those are the only laws that cannot be done asunder by man. And that's because they reign over man. That's because they were given by somebody higher than man. Adams knows this. Sam is, boy, he's bringing the rain, Jack. And Adams continues. In regard to religion, mutual toleration in the different professions thereof, different religions, is what all good and candid minds in all ages have ever practiced, and both by precept and example inculcate on mankind. And it is now generally agreed among Christians that this spirit of toleration, in the fullest extent consistent with being a civil society, is the chief characteristic mark of the true church, and insomuch that Mr. Locke, he cites him, has asserted and proved beyond the possibility of contradiction on any solid ground that such toleration ought to be extended to all whose doctrines are not subversive of society. The only sects which we think ought to be, in which be all wise laws are excluded from such toleration, are those who teach doctrines subversive of the civil government under which they live. The Roman Catholics or Papists are excluded by reason of such doctrines as these, that princes excommunicated may be deposed, and those they call heretics may be destroyed without mercy. Besides, they recognize the Pope in so absolute a manner, and subversive of government, by introducing as far as possible into the states, under whose protection they enjoy life, liberty, and property, that solecism in politics, imperium in imperio, meaning a government within a government, leading directly to the worst anarchy and confusion, civil discord, war, and bloodshed. Time to unpack this one. In regard to religion, mutual toleration of different beliefs is what he's saying. Different professions thereof of these faiths is what all good and candid minds in all ages have ever practiced. Notice what he said, all good and honest minds. So he's saying, if you have not practiced religious tolerance, you weren't a good or candid mind. But be careful, he's not talking about just any religion. And both by precept and example inculcate on mankind. In other words, if you're a good, honest mind, you practice that. You live it, you walk it. You don't just talk it. He says, and it now generally agreed among Christians that the spirit of toleration in the fullest extent consists with being civil society. In other words, the chief characteristic mark of the true church or the true body of Christ is that you tolerate other Christians with different beliefs. He didn't say any religion. He said Christians. He's excluding Roman Catholics from Christianity. I know if you're Catholic, you're not going to like this. I got it. I'll explain it all as we go. Hold on. I don't necessarily agree with Sam Adams here. Just hold on. We're talking about Sammy here. And he says, insomuch that Mr. Locke, he cites John Locke, who got his first and second treatise on government directly from Romans, book of Romans in the Bible, chapters 1 and 2. How do you know, Joe? Locke said so. Locke is the ultimate authority on Locke. We don't get to come back and say, Locke, you don't know what you're doing. No, that would be us doing wrong then. It says, Locke has asserted and proved beyond possibility or contradiction on any solid ground. In other words, you can't rationally argue with Locke in this case. He's got an argument that can't be broken, that such toleration ought to be extended to all those whose doctrines are not subversive of society. Now, right there, stop. What he's saying is that if you have a belief, a religious belief that does not destroy or undermine society, we should tolerate it. Now, they said it only applied to Protestant denomination sects, what they call sects. So not subversive of society, next sentence, the only sects. That's their word for denomination. So if you're a Protestant, whatever denomination you are, we shouldn't be fighting with you. As long as you're not undermining society, we should let you go. Just let you live in peace. That's what he's arguing. They specifically in other places said this does not apply to the Mahatman, doesn't apply to Catholics, doesn't apply to other different religions. There are other religions that this would apply to. And as time went on, the founders realized that they'd missed the mark with what they're writing here early on, and they expanded that to other religions that do not undermine our government. Well, there's very few of those. And for the most part, what the founding fathers at the time of our Declaration and our Constitution were arguing is for Christian religions. Take it up with them if you got a problem with that. But now he goes on, he says and you might, but understand this, they were all unanimously hostile to non-believers. If you didn't believe in God, they wanted nothing, no part of you. They considered you to be an infidel, and they used that word, just like the Muslims do. They said they would rather have Muslims rule this country before they had non-believers rule this country. They were very clear on that. Folks, that is not the language of deists. All the modern historians telling you the founding fathers were deists are lying to you. They're not just mistaken, they're lying because they know better. Samuel Adams continues. He says, the only sects which Locke thinks ought to be, and which by all wise laws are excluded from such toleration, are those who teach doctrines subversive of the civil government under which they live. Today, yes, that would be the Roman Catholic Church, as well as Islam. Yes, the founding fathers would not allow either religion in this country for the reasons that Sam now goes on to state. The Roman Catholics, or papists, are excluded by reason of such doctrine as these. And then he goes on to list some of them. The princes excommunicated may be deposed. In other words, the Roman Catholic Church thought it could remove a leader, a duly elected leader of a country. So what it's saying is it's over the government. That's subversive in nature right there. And that those it calls heretics, if the Catholic Church declared you a heretic, you could be destroyed without mercy. Meaning you could be killed, burned, beheaded. So if it declared you a heretic, it could do whatever it wanted with you. Sam is saying that's not something that a civil government should be doing, a good and candid government or people should be doing. He said, beside their recognition of the Pope in so absolute a manner, in other words, a Catholic sees the Pope as being above the king. And he's saying that's not the way that's supposed to work. In subversion of government, by introducing as far as possible into the state under whose protection they enjoy life. In other words, life, liberty, and property is enjoyed by the Catholics, but they introduce a state within a state. That's what we have now with the progressive movement. Everything that Sam Adams just said applies to the progressive movement. If you've been with me, we've gone through Woodrow Wilson. This is literally what Woodrow Wilson did. So the leader is whoever the elected dictator is, and his government within the government. That elected dictator is the Pope. So whoever's got his arm up Joe Biden's butt right now, because Joe Biden's just a sock puppet, people. You and I all know it. If you've got a brain in your head, you know that Joe Biden can barely find his way out of the daggum toilet in the morning. Somebody's got their arm up his butt. Whoever's got his arm, that's the dictator. Wasn't even elected in this case. And then the state, what we're calling the deep state, that's the state within the state. And it leads directly to the worst anarchy and confusion, civil discord, war, and bloodshed. Well, the only place where we're not yet is open war in our own streets and bloodshed, but we're conducting war and bloodshed overseas in our name. So everything that Sammy here just told us will happen with this type of stuff is happening with the progressives, who are secular humanists. And yes, that's a religion. But it also works this way with the Catholics. Now, over time, the Catholic Church has lost its control over governments, mostly because thank you to the Protestant movement. But a lot of what was going on in this country, must be read in light of the things that Sam here is explaining to us. And Sam gets it from John Locke. You have to read what they do in the Declaration and the Constitution in light of this understanding right here. That this is the proper context of the Declaration and later the Constitution and the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers. Here's your context, especially with religion. A little something that a lot of Catholics are not going to like. The Protestant movement recognized the Catholic Church as the beast, the harlot riding the beast, Mystery Babylon, and they were correct. What they missed was the fact that they are the second horn on the two-horned beast that, horns like a lamb, voice like a dragon. That two-horned beast is another image of Mystery Babylon, the harlot riding government, church and state. So the Protestant church did not totally fully separate itself. But what Sam is doing here is he's addressing church and state. That's what he's really doing. He said all religions should be tolerated and tolerate each other as long as they don't try to control the state and do the state asunder. So let's go back and see where Sam continues. Sam says, the natural liberty of men by entering into society is abridged or restrained so far only as is necessary for the great end of society, the best good of the whole. In other words, your natural rights, you have to constrain them only to the least amount necessary for that society to operate in the best of the whole. Now, that's a simple sentence. It's a one sentence paragraph. It's not one of the most complicated sentences in the world either, but that one is heavy with meaning and understanding. The concept is brilliant. The application gets us sideways all the time. We will be unpacking that in the future. We start today into the very heart and soul and the mission statement of this show. We start beating the drum of the foundation of what your individual rights and liberties are based on. It says, in the state of nature, every man is, under God, judge and sole judge of his own rights and the injuries done him. By entering into society, he agrees to an arbiter or indifferent judge between him and his neighbors. But he no more renounces his original right than by taking a cause out of the ordinary course of law and leaving the decisions to the referees or indifferent arbitrations. In the last case, he may pay the referee for time and trouble. He should be also willing to pay his just quota for the support of government, the law, and constitution, the end of which is to furnish indifferent and impartial judges in all cases that may happen, whether civil, ecclesiastical, marine, or military. Let's go back again and unpack this one. State of nature. Every man is, under God's laws, judge and sole judge of his own rights and injuries done him. In other words, he has to judge for himself. But he has to do so according to God's laws, knowing that God will judge him in the end. That's what Benjamin Franklin says during the Second Constitutional Convention. He steps up and says that, literally. He even defines the American religion in the same way. The deist, pointing to God as your soldier, that's contrary to the definition of deism. So Sam Adams is talking about something that even Franklin has already embraced. We're just not going to see it for a few more years. By entering into society, he, the individual, your sovereign citizen, agrees to an arbiter or an indifferent judge between him and his neighbors. Government is now going to be the judge. But the sovereign citizen does not renounce his original right. He lets somebody else exercise it. He still has it. He can claim it back by taking a cause out of the ordinary course of law. In other words, if I want to use the court system, I'm going to be part of the society. I got to let the court system do this. If I want to be the judge, I have to remove myself from the society, and I'm no longer protected by it. I have no claim against it, for it, from it, whatever. If I'm going to use the society, if I'm going to be part of it, if I'm going to use the courts, I'm expected to pay the referee for his time and trouble. And this means I got to pay the judicial system, the legal system, pay your taxes. He should also be willing to pay his just quota for the support of government, the law, and the Constitution. So all of our libertarian friends who think all taxation is theft, Samuel Adams is smacking you in the head and saying, nope, not if you want to be part of civil society. It's only theft if you want to be the sovereign citizen outside of society, which means if you do something to a member of my society and my member of society decides that you've wronged him or her and you are not part of the society, you've removed yourself, you're a libertarian, you're a civil, sovereign citizen, my society has no claim over you. So if I kill you, you have no reason to complain. You removed yourself from the system that protects you from arbitrary rule. So for all of those libertarians and sovereign citizens out there who don't understand, you have no part of the founding fathers' ideology, because it's not just Sam Adams who argues this. He's telling us this right here. If you want part of society, you're owed, duty bound, pay your just part of it. Now that doesn't mean because I have $100 million, I owe more money. I either owe the same sum or the same percentage. And if you say, no, Joe, you got to pay more because you're richer, now you've just gone outside of the exact same principles that Sam Adams is saying, and which we'll cover in other essays and other pieces of the foundation leading up to the Declaration. But that's what's going on right here. If you're going to appeal to government, you owe to keep it up. Pay your part, and then let it do its job. It's supposed to be the impartial judge. Now you've submitted to its rulings. If you want to still be your own judge, then society's going to turn against you. The whole of the people will turn against you. They'll be your enemy, but you're in a state of nature with it now. If you can't fight it, that's your problem. You made your choice. So for all of us thinking that we need to go to civil war against the government right now, when we lose, we better understand that that's our fault. It's our choice. Okay? So maybe you might want to start trying to think a different way. Let's use what little is left to us within the system to try and change it. There are things we can still do that'll work, but the way we've been doing it is not, you're not voting yourself out of this. You're going to have to do this a different way. Sam Adams continues, the natural liberty of man is to be free from any superior power on earth, and not to be under the will or legislative authority of man, but only to have the law of nature for his rule. He's quoting John Locke. At the bottom of this essay are all, if you go to your show notes, you'll find all the references. In short, it is the greatest absurdity to suppose it in the power of one or any number of men at the entering into society to renounce their essential natural rights or the means of preserving those rights, when the great end of civil government, from the very nature of institutions, is for the support, protection, and defense of those very rights, the principle of which are life, liberty, and property. If men, through fear, fraud, or mistake, should in terms renounce and give up any essential natural right, the eternal law of reason and the great end of society would absolutely vacate such renunciation. The right to freedom being the gift of God Almighty, it is not in the power of man to alienate this gift and voluntarily become a slave. Remember just a minute ago when I told you you cannot give up your natural rights forever? See, I told you Sam knew what he was talking about. He just enunciated it. He elicited it, detailed it. In short, it is an absurdity to suppose that any man or a group of men can get together, enter into a society, and in the process, give up their essential natural rights. That's because they were given by God, not by man. And you do not give up the right to preserve them. Hence the Second Amendment. When the great end of civil government is the very nature of government is to support, protect, and defend those rights. Any government that does not do that, according to the founding fathers, see, they're arguing the principles and the ideals. Any government that does not support and defend and uphold your natural rights is not legitimate. You are in a state of war with that group of people. You have a right to use force against them at that point. This, you're starting to see the source of the argument, the justification for using force against the king. They tried. The king then finally started using force against them. They were in a legitimate act of self-defense. We are at a point very close to that right now in the United States of America. Not quite. You still have legal means to fight back. You must exhaust them first. They're not going to be easy. They're not going to be comfortable. They're not going to be popular. If you choose liberty over slavery, you better embrace the uncomfortable. Otherwise, go home, bend down, and lick the hand of him who puts the chains on you, and may those chains rest easy on your shoulders. We are going to forget you were ever our countrymen. Incidentally, I think that's Sam Adams too, paraphrasing him. So he says that you cannot renounce your rights. All good government is there to protect those rights. That's the principle of which it's supposed to be. And the principle of those rights is life, liberty, and property. If men, through fear, fraud, or mistake, you've seen this quote before if you found the fathers at all. This is where it comes from. If men, through fear, COVID, give up your rights. Nope. Through fraud, oh, well, I won this election, even though all the votes I needed were found in the middle of the night in places where you weren't allowed to go and verify that those votes were real. Or mistake, oops, I thought Biden was a good guy. I didn't know about Hunter Biden and the fact that he was actually on the Chinese payroll. Should in terms renounce and make up or give up any essential natural right, the law of reason, rationality, and the great end of society, the purpose of which government was formed, would absolutely vacate those renunciations. In other words, you got all rights in the world to bring those laws, those rights back to you. You can reclaim them anytime you want. Hey, this sounds a lot like the stuff Joe's been telling me for years. Duh, where do you think I got it from? You mean you didn't make it up yourself, Joe? Nope. Nope. I stumbled across it because I was like, well, that doesn't sound right, Mr. Historian. That doesn't sound like the founders I know. Started reading the Founding Fathers, found out, hey, these guys wrote a lot more than what my history books told me. Gee, let's read some of it. Hey, these people are not who my history teachers told me they were. All these people, oh, they're just a bunch of rich white men who want to keep everything to themselves and own slaves. Nope. Nope. Sam Adams is an absolutionist. In the history, in the course of studying the history of the Declaration of Independence, we're going to find out there was just I think it was 2 or 3 stinking states that got in the way of us ending slavery right then and there when we declared our independence. We'll get that. I'll show it to you. And we'll see why they did it. They had to start the breathing before they worried about stopping the bleeding. If you know anything about triage, you die faster from lack of oxygen than you do from lack of blood. So back to old Sammy here. Freedom and your natural rights are a gift of God Almighty. So much for nature's God being deism. God Almighty is a thoroughly Christian phrase. It's not in the power of man to alienate those gifts. In other words, folks, you cannot voluntarily become a slave. It has to be done by force. Point number 2 says the rights of the colonists as Christians. What? Yeah. What did I tell you? Just keep reading. Where have we heard that phrase before? These may be the best understood by reading. Oh, this is Sam. These may be best understood by reading and carefully studying the institutes of the great lawgiver and head of the Christian church, which are to be found clearly written and promulgated in the New Testament. The rights of the colonists are best found by carefully reading the New Testament, which relies entirely on the Old Testament. Gee, wait a minute. Stop. Joe, did you just tell me that Sam Adams said the rights of the colonists as Christians are found in the Bible? Yep. Only I didn't tell you. Sammy boy did. Well, who's Sam? Who's Sam? He's kind of like the guy who got the ball rolling. You know, the man behind the Boston Tea Party. The one who said, I've had enough. Let's get on with it. Okay, so let's get on with it. Sam continues. By the act of the British Parliament, commonly called the Toleration Act, and that's cited in the end of this essay and in your class notes, every subject in England except papists, Catholics, was restored to and reestablished in his natural right to worship God according to the dictates of his own conscience. This is not the God of deism. And by the charter of this province, it is granted, ordained, and established as an original right that there shall be liberty of conscience allowed in the worship of God to all Christians except papists. Magna Carta itself is in substance but a constrained declaration or proclamation or promulgation in the name of the king, lords, and commons of the sense of the latter had of their original inherited, indefeasible, in other words, inalienable, inseparable natural rights, as also those of free citizens equally perdurable, enduring forever, imperished with the other. Okay, this is old language that we don't understand here today. Let's go back. First of all, he says, and by the charter of this province, in other words, the charter that's established the state he's in, Massachusetts. So he's right there. He's telling the king and parliament, hey, I'm included in all of this. I don't have to be in England to have these rights. You gave it to me legally through the charter. He said, it is granted, ordained, and established as an original right. In other words, you made this law. It says that there shall be liberty of conscience allowed in the worship of God. Well, there's that freedom of religion. Liberty of conscience is what they're talking about. Conscience, freedom of religion, freedom to follow what you think is right. Hey, wait a minute. That's called the pursuit of happiness, joy, the righteous life. See where these principles are starting to pop up from the Declaration? He says, okay, I've got the right to pursue happiness, right of consciousness. There shall be liberty of consciousness allowed in the worship of God to all Christians except papists. He does not count Roman Catholics as being Christians. Me personally, I think there are true believers caught within the Roman Catholic Church, but the scriptures tell them clearly, come out of mystery Babylon, my children. So separate from it, because that church is a harlot. It's a heretic. It says the Magna Carta itself is in substance, in the essence of the Magna Carta, it's just a constraint, a declaration of constraints, a proclamation or a promulgation in the name of the king. The king and the commons, the parliament are all saying that I'm restraining myself and my powers in regard to your right of conscience. In other words, I'm not going to trample over you. Your natural rights are inseparable. They're inalienable. And as a free citizen, they're enduring. They're imperishable with any other. The idea, the Declaration of Independence, that these rights are inalienable, it existed long before Jefferson penned them. Sam Adams is telling you it was in the essence of the Magna Carta, and he's correct. So he continues. Sammy says, the great author, that great jurist, and even that court writer, Mr. Justice Blackstone, Sir William Blackstone, holds that this recognition was justly obtained of King John, sword in hand, and peradventure it must be one day, sword in hand, again rescued and preserved from total destruction and oblivion. Right here, what's going on is Samuel Adams is telling George, hey, you're an usurper. You're not the rightful heir to this throne. Said, so not only are you in violation of the natural law of things and the constraints of the Magna Carta and English law, you're in violation of the holy laws as well. So Sam Adams is using, he's appealing back to John Locke, and he's throwing a shot across the bow of King George, telling him George, you're totally in the wrong. You're the one that's in the wrong from start to finish here. It's you. So Adams goes on, you know what? We need to stop right about here. We're coming up on the break. We're going to hold up on point 3. Hopefully, I'm starting to show you here some things you might not have known about. The whole point is to start bringing things to your attention that are readily available, but they start showing you that the foundations of the Declaration of Independence go back a lot farther than most of us were taught or most of us were made aware of. And that's what I'm hoping. That's the whole point of this. I want us to go back and see the foundations. What's going on there? And where'd they come from? So right now, Sam Adams has already pointed you all the way back to the Magna Carta. Well, the Magna Carta points back to another document in English history, which points to the Lex Rex, which is in Europe, and that one goes all the way back to the writings of the Apostolic Fathers, who get it from the Bible. There's a direct line from the Bible to the Constitution of the United States, to man's liberty, the way we understand it. Hence the name, the Road to Concord. It's not the actual road where the battle was fought. It was the path that men had to travel, free men, free women, people who wanted to be free had to travel legally, philosophically, to get to Lexington Green where liberty of man was finally established and the rule of law over the rule of men, or at least the experiment was tried. And as we're demonstrating now, man is not capable of ruling himself. So you're going to need somebody to rule you, because apparently we can't do it ourselves. So if we want to gain liberty, who's going to rule us? Are we going to elect a tyrant? Are we going to try to be the tyrant? Are we going to finally bend our knee, touch it to the ground, and let the God of this universe, the creator of the universe, be our guide and our ruler? In other words, to quote Mr. Winthrop or paraphrase him, do we want to live under the rule of a sword or the Bible? Oh, crap, you brought that Bible into it again, Joe. Well, it's either that or the sword in the hands of somebody you might not like. Which one is it going to be? Because you got to bend to one of them. Otaki Sanjay wants to know whether she's on Rumble. Those don't come up on Discord, those comments. She wants to know if Charlie has been killed. No, Charlie is still alive. He just looks like he's in critical care unit. Yeah, like I said, I beat him within an inch of his life. I didn't go all the way. Anyhow, let's go to the break just a little early, since we've got some more Sam to go through, and then I want to bring it to modern days and show you where some of what Sam's talking about. And then if we have a little time, I might introduce you to another document you can look up and study for homework over the weekend. So let's take 3 minutes now. It's just a little early. It's not horribly early, but we'll take 3 minutes. I'll give you the rah-rah break music and banner. You can come back with musket in hand. We'll pick up with Sam Adams again. We'll go through the rest of his essay. It's not a whole lot of it left. Break it down as we go. And then we'll go over some modern things, tell you where we're heading in the next few weeks. And if we have a little bit of time left, I'll show you some homework assignment for over the weekend. All right, 3 minutes. Back in your chairs on time. No tardiness. Sharky, leave Bonnie alone. Stay out of the janitor's closet, you two. I know you're married, but still. Cool. We're back. Hey, we kept everybody too. What do you know? How about that? I must be doing something interesting today because it dang sure ain't my good looks. Sorry, BB. I don't know. I didn't catch her for that, and I'm not rich. Hmm. Anyway, let's get back to Sam Adams. We're going over his essay on the rights of the colonists. We left him off on his point number 3, the rights of the colonists as subjects, subjects to the king. He says a commonwealth or state is a body politic or civil society of men united together to promote their mutual safety and prosperity by means of their union. Remember when I like to go to definitions when I'm making arguments? Look at what Mr. Samuel Adams does here. He starts off by defining the term. That's kind of cool. I like him. This is my love language, folks. I can deal with people like this because he tells me exactly what he means by the word. And then he goes on. Says the absolute rights of Englishmen and all free men in or out of civil society are principally personal security, personal liberty, and private property. In other words, there's your natural rights: life, liberty, property. All Englishmen. The colonists were legally Englishmen, but the crown didn't want to treat them that way. So Sam goes on. All persons born in the British American colonies are by the laws of God and nature and by the common law of England, exclusive of all charters from the crown, well entitled, and by the acts of British Parliament are declared to be entitled to all the natural, essential, inherent, and inseparable rights, liberties, and privileges of subjects born in Great Britain or within the realm. He's telling them that you are treating us illegally. He is throwing down the gauntlet. This is a legal appeal, a legal objection. He's saying you're breaking the law like our government is doing now. Sorry, I was reading somebody comment from the cheap seats there in the classroom. But right here, Sam Adams is telling people, the king is in violation of the law, not the colonies. We're not the one in the wrong. In this country right now, for the most part, the people are not the ones in the wrong. The government is. We're in a far worse state today. Intellectually, ideologically, philosophically, we're in a worse state today than they were at the time Sam Adams was writing. As far as physical peril goes, we're not there yet, but we're getting close. Sam continues, he says, amongst those rights are the following, which no man or body of men, consistently with their own rights as men and citizens or members of society, can for themselves give up or take away from others. Okay, those are the rights that you can't take from others. Let's see what he's got going on here. It says, first, the first fundamental positive law, there's positive law again, of all commonwealths or states is the establishing of the legislative power. In other words, you got to have a body that makes laws. The first fundamental natural law also, which is to govern even the legislative power itself, is the preservation of the society. Preserving society governs over the legislative body. I was asked if I was going to comment on this prisoner exchange that just happened, where we give an enemy of the state back to the enemy of our nation in exchange for somebody who doesn't want to be part of our society anymore. That would seem to be an act that actually goes against the preservation of our society, because we're giving an arms dealer back over to the people who will use those arms to do harm to our society. The Declaration would call that an act of treason. Are you saying that Joe Biden committed treason when he gave the arms dealer for whatever that basketball player is? Yes. That trade was a constitutionally defined act of treason. The fact that the articles of impeachment have not been filed today tells you that both parties, Republicans and Democrats, are in cahoots with the traitor. Period. If they were not, the articles of impeachment would have been filed, because that is a constitutionally defined act of treason. You gave a terrorist arms dealer. He collects and sells and bargains weapons to the terrorists, who our own government says they're terrorists. They're against us. They're wanting to, we're cowards. We won't declare war, but we declare them enemies of our country. which means we gave back an enemy combatant to an enemy in exchange for somebody who renounces her citizenship for all practical purposes. That, folks, is an act that goes against the preservation of our society. And as Sam Adams just says, he didn't use the words concept, concept, concept. He just said that goes against the natural law of self-preservation. And the natural law takes precedent over the civil law. So the natural law of preservation goes over, it's above what Biden just did, meaning Biden committed treason. If you understand the concepts, this is simple. In an actual, real court of law, in a court of law that was not biased by politics and political ideology, I could convict that man easy. It'd take a one-day trial. It'd be easy. This is what he did. Here's the definition. There's the law in the Constitution. Done. But then again, we don't have a jury in this country that knows how to think straight well enough to convict him for it. They would think, oh, well, because my kitty cat loved my dog and my dog loved Biden and Biden loved her, he's free. He's not guilty of anything. And that would be about the length of the logic that went into it. So anyhow, to the person who asked me to comment on that for right now, that's the extent of my comment. And I waited until I had the opportune time in the class today to make it. Back to Sam. Sam says, secondly, the legislative has no right to absolute arbitrary power over the lives and fortunes of the people. In other words, government does not have power and authority over the people. What? Yeah. Biden, you ought to pay attention to that. You have no authority to tell me to take the jab. Natural law over civil law. Nor can mortals assume a prerogative not only too high for men, but for angels, and therefore reserved for the exercise of the deity alone. In other words, when you start telling people what they have to do in terms of their life, liberty, and the property necessary to sustain them both, you are assuming the powers of God. And Adams is saying you have no such power, nor can you give it to yourself, not according to the laws of nature. And if you try, you're in violation of the charter that puts you in there as you're no longer president. You're no longer king. Now we have a right to do something with you. It's called self-defense. Do y'all see what Sam's doing here? He's laying the ideological, the philosophical groundwork for the Declaration of Independence. Well, I thought Jefferson did that. Because we have a need for heroes. Well, it's not just Sam either. Do you think Sam got all these ideas out of a vacuum? You think I get my understanding of what the founding was about out of a vacuum? No, it was by the people that come before us. None of us lives in a vacuum. We benefit from everything that was done by the men and women that came before us. And yes, I'm well aware, men and women. Sam continues, the legislative cannot justly assume to itself a power to rule by extempore arbitrary decrees, but it is bound to see that justice is dispensed and that the rights of the subjects be decided by promulgating standing and known laws and authorized independent judges, that is, independent as far as possible of princes or people. There shall be no rule of justice for rich and poor, for the favorite in court and the countryman at the plow. This is John Locke. John says the legislative, whoever makes the laws, cannot justly assume for itself power to rule without arbitrarily, just by decrees. But it is bound. It is justice binds it so that it dispenses with the rights of subjects to be decided by known fixed laws that don't change according to how you interpret them from today to tomorrow. In other words, John Locke's telling each and every one of you progressives, whether you be a Democrat left-wing progressive or a Republican right-wing progressive, he's telling all of you, you're tyrants. All of you. All of you. Well, there are good. No, not anymore. No. Both parties are progressive. Hear me. Both parties are progressives. If you are in either party, you are putting your political weight and your moral responsibility before the creator of the universe with that party. And by the definition that Locke and our founding fathers embraced Locke's definition of this, by that understanding, by their understanding of natural law, you are a tyrant because you give your voice to the tyrants. So when you vote D or R, no matter how you justify it, you're voting tyranny. Learn it, love it, live it. If it bothers you, kick yourself out of the system. Well, Joe, then the others will win. I just told you, whether you vote D or R, you vote tyrant. Well, I'm getting the little tyrant. No, you're not. You're getting a tyrant. Not my words. Locke's, who was embraced, endorsed, and advanced by the founding fathers. As Sam Adams quoted him right here for that purpose. Thirdly, this Sam Adams again. Thirdly, the supreme power cannot justly take from any man any part of its property without his consent, in person or by his representative. In other words, you need due process. You got to prove he did something to lose it. Notice everything that's being said here. A just government, a just government, a government that is just under natural law, according to the author of that natural law. Are you just according to the Bible? Earlier in this essay, on this piece, that's what Sam Adams pointed to as the rights of the colonists as Christians, the Bible. Well, those are religious rights. That's not what he said. He said the rights. So if you're out of accord, if you're not in agreement with natural law in this understanding, he's telling you you're not a just government. He is 100% correct. At least in the terms of anybody who seems to be claiming that they want to be under the Constitution. Let's continue. Sam says, these are some of the first principles of natural law and justice. And he's correct. And the great barriers of all free states and of the British Constitution in particular. It is utterly irreconcilable to these principles and to many other fundamental maxims of the common law, common sense, and reason that a British House of Commons should have a right, at pleasure, to give and grant the property of the colonists. That these colonists are well entitled to all the essential rights, liberties, and privileges of men and freemen born in Britain is manifest not only from the colony charter, but acts of the British Parliament. Now, this is a quote. He's quoting in there. It says, now what liberty can there be where property is taken away without consent? What liberty can there be where property is taken away without consent? Can it be said with any color of truth and justice that this constitutes a 3,000 mile in length and of breadth as yet unexplored, in which there are 5 millions of people, meaning there's 5 million colonists, has the least voice, vote, or influence in the decisions of the British Parliament? Have they, altogether, any more right or power to return a single number to that House of Commons who have not inadvertently but deliberately assumed a power to dispose of their lives, liberty, and properties than to choose an emperor of China? Had the colonists a right to return members to British Parliament, it would only be hurtful, as from their local situation and circumstances, it is possible they be ever truly and properly represented there. Let's go unpack that. He goes over the first principles of natural law. He's telling them he's talking to Parliament here. You're out of line. It's utterly irreconcilable. You can't justify any of this. Your law says that we have these rights. And then he goes on to complain. He says, you're not even letting us elect anybody to send to Parliament to represent us. And you're disposing with us, our lives, and our property. I don't know if you were in class, but maybe you'll remember I went over Edmund Burke, where he was justifying the sale of 1/3 of the world to the East India Tea Company, and the right of the East India Tea Company to own and do away with the people in that part of the world and their property as the company saw fit. Edmund Burke, the founder of the conservative movement, who supported the colonists, but then turned around and supported the law, because the law in England, there was a positive law, man-made law. Whenever you hear somebody say positive law, just think man-made law, man's law. It's got nothing to do with morality. It's man-made law. So Burke is justifying and defending a man-made law that gives 1/3 of the people in the world, the known world, to a tea company. and they can do with you as they see fit. They want to kill you, they kill you, no problem. They bought the right to do that. Burke's defending it. This is part of what Sam Adams is opposing. He's saying, hey, you're letting you and other people, you're doing whatever you want with us. You're treating us as we're a piece of your property. And he's objecting. Say, well, Joe, that they owned slaves. We're going to cover that in the next few weeks. The founders tried to address that. If it hadn't been for, I think it was 2 states, we'd have ended slavery in 1776. 2 states. So it's not the whole nation that's stained with that. It's 2 states. It's not even the South. It's 2 states. You do not punish the child for the crime of the father. You do not punish the whole for the crimes of 2 states. The people who do that are unjust. So what Adams is doing is he's saying, you don't have the right to do this. Your own laws say you don't have the right to do this. Our government today is in violation of the same principle that led our founding fathers to revolt. Now, the founders exhausted all legal means they had before they wrote the Declaration. We in America have not yet exhausted all legal means available to us to resist. So those calling for civil war, revolution, not yet. You're not there. The inhabitants of this country, Sam continues, the inhabitants of this country, in all probability, in a few years, will be more numerous than those of Great Britain and Ireland together. Yet it is absurdly unexpected by the promoters of the present measure that these, meaning the colonies, with their posterity to all generations, should be easy, while their property, meaning feel comfortable, while their property shall be disposed of by the House of Commons 3,000 miles distant from them, and who cannot be supposed to have the least care or concern for their real interests, who have not only no natural care for their interests, but must be in effect bribed against it, as every burden they lay on the colonists is so much saved or gained to themselves. Hitherto, many of the colonists have been free from quit rents. You're going to have to look this up in the notes. We'll show you in a minute. But in the breadth of the British House of Commons can originate an act for taking away all our money. Our lands will go next to the subject to rack rents from haughty and relentless landlords who will ride at ease while we are trodden in the dirt. The colonists have been branded with the odious names of traitors and rebels only for complaining of their grievances. So what? Okay, real quick. Previously, a quit rent. It's an annual fee based on acreage paid by the landowner to a person or a colonist proprietor or king or queen of the heir of the person who originally granted the title to the land. In other words, you're paying a rent for that property. Sam is saying that colonists didn't used to be subject to those. Now, a rack rent comes, that's an excessively high quotient or price or rent. What was going on is the Parliament was granting these uh, taxes or rent fees to other British colonists, and now the poor colonists were having to pay the Tories for the right to use the land that previously was theirs to use free. And the Tories were giving money to the members of Parliament for the right to have that. In other words, they were corrupt, and they were bribing Parliament so that they. Let me put this in another way. If Jimmy Zinker gets to hear this show, he'll love this. Sam Adams is complaining about Donald Trump, who gave money to the Democrats, who then let him use the eminent domain laws to take that one lady's property and that he didn't ever use. Jimmy's case that he likes to bring up. Yes, Trump used the law to steal the property of a private citizen that he wanted, and then he didn't do anything with it. Ultimately, he just took it from her, and it was done because he promised to pay the government more rent. I mean, more taxes and everything with the development. So, hey, city ordinance, man, if you let me use the eminent domain laws to steal this woman's property, you're going to make more money in taxes. Oh, cool. We'll let you do it. Everybody in violation of the law. The woman has her property stolen. That is exactly what Sam Adams is complaining about here that the Parliament was doing. It is the exact same thing. No different. That's an apples to apples. It's just modern day version of it versus the times how it was being done. It's just difference in ice cream. It's still ice cream, and it happens all the time. We've got them doing it all the time here in this country. What he's saying is Parliament won't do anything unless you bribe them. And then when you bribe them, what they're doing is corrupt. So, yeah. See where we're going here? So, a couple of times Sam mentioned positive laws. This is from Wikipedia. If you go to your show notes, I put the Wikipedia 2 pages from Wiki. I linked them, I gave them credit, all that good stuff. I put 2 pages of Wiki in your show notes. This is positive laws are human made laws, man made laws that oblige or specify an action. These are things that must be done. Positive law also describes the establishment of specific rights for an individual or group. If you may have rights for a group, Sam Adams just said that that goes against natural law. Sammy is right. Basically, what we're talking about here, let's see, how do we do this? If you're human, you got a right to a house. Say, well, I'm not rich enough to afford it. Well, then the government's got to give it to you because it's a positive right that we made up from a man-made law. So now government's going to give you a house. Uh-huh. Yeah. That's not natural law. Yeah, it is. No, it isn't. Natural law doesn't give any right to an animal to a house. Well, they got a right to make one. Yeah, there you go. You got a right to seek to own a house, but that doesn't mean you have a right to actually get one. Well, we're going to change that because you're human and you deserve it. You also deserve health care. Ah, health care would be a positive law. And according to our founding fathers, when you put one person over another, well, you're rich, you don't need any help. That guy's poor. We're going to take money from you, Richie, to give it to him because everybody needs health care. You just violated natural law and took it upon yourself to be God. That's not what the founder said. That's exactly what Sam Adams just said. We read it. Remember the part where he says if you try to do these things, you're trying to do something that belongs to the deity? Where do you think I got the idea that these people are trying to be little g gods? From other men and women who have come before me, who explained it in great, exquisite detail in arguments that cannot be broken. So along comes the progressive and just says, well, I'll just redefine the words, and now you can't think of it that way anymore, so now you'll believe me because you have no way of thinking the way Sam Adams did. But then some idiot like me stands up and says, I don't care what words you give me. I can think that way. I'll just bend the word to suit my purpose. I will express my thought no matter what limitations you try to place on my language. And then I become the 10% that has to be re-educated because I refuse to comply with the little g God. And here we are. So you can go over that. Positive law. I hate it. Positive law is basically justifying things that positive law is saying, hey, the East India Tea Company has a right to own 1/3 of the world because they paid me for it. So now they can do whatever they want with those people and their money and their lives. Positive law is slavery. Positive law is reparations. Mhm. Positive law is affirmative action. Positive law is hate laws. Positive law is censorship, canceling. That's all positive law. It's all violations of natural law. All of it. It's unjust. It's illegal under the Constitution. And yet we're doing it. Congratulations, the government is the King of England. Please refer to your show notes for this. In your show notes, you will find a copy of Adams' essay as well as a copy of Wikipedia's pages discussing positive law and negative versus positive rights. You will also find a short video clip of Obama on a Chicago radio interview lamenting the fact that the Supreme Court did not take the opportunity of the civil rights movement to rewrite the Constitution by a ruling according to the theory of positive law and declaring positive rights. An act that would not only be a clear violation of the Constitution, but an open act of subversion by SCOTUS. And if the SCOTUS ruling had been done and accepted the way Obama wanted, would have constituted, by the federal government, it would have constituted a declaration of war upon the states by the federal government. You might want to re-watch that video. It's only about 4 minutes long. It's a video of an audio clip. It's in your show notes. And that's exactly what Obama does. He laments the fact that this case that was came up before the Supreme Court during the Civil Rights Movement. He laments the fact that the court did not take its opportunity to rewrite the Constitution by instituting positive laws through interpretation of the Constitution. That's subversion. What did Sam Adams just say about subversives? Should not be tolerated or allowed. Well, he was talking about religion, Joe. Progressivism is a religion. It's secular humanism. Man is his own God. If you've been in class, we've run across progressives saying that man is his own God and the teacher will be the prophet of his new religion. Y'all remember this? So some of the things you've heard me say over the years on Steve's show or here or wherever you've encountered me on my blogging, you thought I was nuts because you didn't know what I was saying. You didn't know about it. If you've been in class, you know now. Not so crazy anymore. I'm just espousing ideas from the only men to successfully establish a country that was properly ruled by rule of law. Even the King and Queen of England never allowed that to happen. Parliament has never actually ruled freely the way we have. It was our example that made them change. The whole world has known freedom, liberty, in as much as we've been able to exercise it. Never perfect because we're human. But the whole world, what it's known of actual true liberty for everybody, smallest to the greatest, was brought about because of those men in 1776. There's been no time in it. Well, Joe, they were still, yeah, slaves. I got it. I know. We paid in that for that in blood. We're still paying for it in blood. Got it. But there are men and women who take a hold of that and they turn it to their own good, their own use, their own agenda, and they use it for their purposes, and they're no different than the slave owners. They're using the issue to force things on other people. They're no different. They're forcing things on against the will of others. Doesn't matter if I don't say I own you. They're putting you in a box where you got no choice but to do what they tell you because your skin color is the wrong color. That's still slavery, folks. It's just you're not on a plantation. You're on a bigger plantation, one that you can't see the edges of. Ideologically, it's the same exact thing. Nothing's changed. So you have a group of men who are explaining their ideas, their ideology, their philosophy, their goals, the principle, the idea upon which this country was founded. And you live in a very blessed period of time. Man has only known that type of liberty for about 200 years. It took about 40 for us to get rid of slavery, or 45, 50, but man's only known that type of liberty for about 200 years, give or take. You live in a blessed point in human history because even before the Civil Rights Movement, you were still free, even as a black person, to do whatever you would quit your complaining and griping about and go do. Easy for you to say, Joe, you're white. Stop. I'll take you to the Appalachians. I'll show you what poor is. They're white. A lot more blacks pulled themselves up out of the situation they were in than people pulled themselves up out of the Appalachians. It's not skin color. It's culture. We've covered this before. It's culture. So this is what the founding fathers are dealing with. This is what they're arguing about. We still have it today. So as the English crown in Adam's day, we have people in our day pointing to positive rights law to justify their agenda. As the colonists saw it, this is an attempt to justify tyranny, as it appeals to the will of the one who holds the power to assert what is and is not a positive or right or law. Whereas the founders held that natural rights and natural law remove such control from the hands of man and place it properly in the hands of he who wrote those natural laws, the creator of the universe. This is why the founders side with Locke and not Hobbes. And we've already seen where what I just wrote here, this is my words. We've already seen where everything I just wrote for you here came directly from Sam Adams' essay, his letter. Ta-da, ta-da. Cool beans, huh? Looking ahead to the next few Founders Fridays. It's time to start getting serious about our study of our nation's founding. And I mean serious. College level courses coming up, folks. You can handle it. You can do this. You can do this. Just be in class. If I go too fast, ask a question. That's what the comment sections are for. That's what the email is for. If I don't know the answer, I'll find it for you, or we'll find it together. You can do this. It might be that I'm going to have to force you to think sometimes, but you can do all of this if you want to. So it's time to start serious study of our nation's founding. What exactly were the principles and ideals embraced by our founding fathers? Why did they? Why did they embrace them over other ideas? Why? Why did they embrace the ones they did over others? We're going to find out. Next week, I'll introduce you to a few of the sources our founding fathers cited that lie outside of those which you are most familiar. It's time to meet Cicero, Montesquieu, Rousseau, Sir William Blackstone, and a few others, John Locke. We will meet these men in leading up to the more deliberate look at John Locke and then the Declaration of Independence. The ideas, the concepts, the foundation stones upon which all of this is built. We're going to start looking at that. If you are of a mind to do so, there's two of the books that you might want to put in your library. Sharky, no. Bonnie's going to find out. She's going to hurt you. It's the first and second treatise of government, John Locke. John Locke says the ideas and concepts in that book come straight from the book of Romans, chapters 1 and 2. The other book is Defending the Declaration, How the Bible and Christianity Influenced the Writing of the Declaration of Independence by Gary T. Amos. That is a very good book. This is what we're going to do for the next few Founding Fathers Fridays. We're going to set aside logic for a little while. We might stick those classes into Tuesdays because I know a lot of you like them. I'm not going to ignore them. Or we might split up Fridays where we do a little bit of the founding ideas. And we're going to address these ideas head on directly, purposefully. It's time to start looking at them and dissecting them. Do this for ourselves in our own world, however which kind of way we want to. But we're going to look at them. And we're not going to be afraid of what we found, good and bad, because there's both. We'll find them both. And we'll go from there. We'll see where we get. And then we're going to eventually, we're going to get to the Declaration. We're going to read it word for word and discuss it as we go. Now, I told you, get to this point, I might ask you to take a look at something else. Let's read this real quick. You might want to go back and study it. If you get a chance, Mr. Zinker out there, here you go, baby. This one is right down your alley. This is a little essay. It's called Property by James Madison. It was written March 29th, 1792. 92. After the Constitution's been ratified, I believe. Madison wrote this article to explain the relationship between property and rights and other natural rights. Property rights and other natural rights. Let's just read through it real quick. I'm not going to stop and do a whole lot of commentary on this one, but I want you to hear this. This term, in its particular application, means that dominion which one man claims and exercises over the external things of the world and exclusive of every other individual. I got to make a comment real quick. I'm sorry. He just gave the definition like Sam Adams did. He defines this term. The definition of this term precludes slavery. In other words, his definition of what he means by property does not allow for the exercise of slavery. Madison was an abolitionist. So let's keep reading. In its large and juster meaning, it embraces everything to which a man may attach a value and have a right, and which leaves to everyone else the like advantage. In the former sense, a man's land or merchandise or money is called his property. In the latter sense, a man has property in his opinions and the free communication of them. He has property of a peculiar value in his religious opinions and in the profession and practice dictated by them. He has property very dear to him in the safety and liberty of his person. He has an equal property in the free use of his faculties and free choice of the objects on which to employ them. In a word, as a man is said to have a right to his property, he may be equally said to have a right in his rights, or property in his rights, rather. His rights are property. Where an excess of power prevails, property of no sort is duly respected. No man is safe in his opinions, his person, his faculties, or his possessions. Where there is an excess of liberty, the effect is the same, though from an opposite cause. Did you notice what he just said? Where you libertarians get your way, you end up with the same thing, tyranny, for the opposite cause. Gee, I wonder where Joe got that idea from. Government is instituted to protect property of every sort, as well that which lies in the various rights of individuals, as that which is the term it particularly expresses. This being the end of government, that alone is a just government which impartially secures to every man whatever is his own. According to this standard of merit, the praise of affording a just securing to property should be sparingly bestowed on a government which, however scrupulously guarding the possessions of individuals, does not protect them in the enjoyment or communication of their opinions, in which they have an equal and, in estimated of some, a more valuable property. More sparingly should this praise be allowed to a government where a man's religious rights are violated by penalties, or fettered by tests, or taxed by a hierarchy. Conscience is the most sacred of all property, other property depending in part on positive law, the exercise of that being a natural and unalienable right. To guard a man's house as his castle, to pay public and enforce private debts with the most exact faith, can give no title to invade a man's conscience, which is more sacred than his castle, or withhold from it the debt of protection, for which the public faith is pledged by the very nature and original condition of the social pact. This is not a just government, nor is property secured under it, where the property which a man has in his personal safety and personal liberty is violated by arbitrary seizures of one class of citizens for the service of the rest, welfare. A magistrate issuing his warrant to press gang would be in proper function in Turkey or Indostan. In other words, this is the thing that you do in Turkey. In other words, this is what Muslims do under appellation's proverbial and most complete despotism. That is not a just government, nor is it property secured under it, where arbitrary restrictions, exemptions, and monopolies deny the part of this citizens that free use of their faculties and free choice of their occupations, which not only constitute their property in the general sense of the word, but are the means of acquiring property strictly so called. What must be spirit of legislation where a manufacturer of linen cloth is forbidden to bury his own child in a linen shroud in order to favor his neighbor who manufactures woolen cloth, where the manufacturer and wearer of woolen cloth are again forbid the economical use of buttons of the material in favor of the manufacture of buttons of other materials. Stop for a minute. This does need an explanation. What he's saying what he's saying is that you're not going to be it's not a just government if they force you to use one person's product against another. So if I'm not going to let you use gasoline and you have to use electric, well, Joe, that's for the safety of the world. That doesn't come into play. Well, Joe, that the collect Sam Adams and James Madison, have both focused on the individual, not the collective. Any form of justice, I say that mockingly, based on a collective is not justice. It is right here being defined by Madison as injustice because you've put one group over another and you've not treated them equally. Our entire world, our entire world is unjust according to natural law, as our founders, John Locke, understood it, and as natural law actually operates. We are under the rule of man everywhere, and man thinks he's God. If you don't think you're living in the days of Noah, you don't understand that phrase well enough. A just, Madison continues, a just security to property is not afforded by that government under which unequal taxes oppress one species of property and reward another species. We're there. Where arbitrary taxes invade the domestic sanctuaries of the rich and excessive taxes grind the faces of the poor. We're there. Where the keenness and competitions of want are deemed an insufficient spur to labor. We're there. And taxes are again applied by an unfeeling policy as another spur in violation of the sacred property which heaven, in decreeing man to earn his bread by the sweat of his brow, kindly reserves to him in the small response that could be spared from the supply of necessities. For people who tell me that Madison wanted nothing to do with religion, you're going to have to explain to me why he just quoted Genesis, quoted it properly. Madison says, if there be a government, then, which prides itself in maintaining the inviolability of property, which provides that none shall be taken directly, even for public use, without indemnification to the owner, and yet directly violates the property which individuals have in their opinions, their religion, their person, and their faculties, nay, more, which indirectly violate their property in their actual possessions, in their labor that acquired their daily substance, and in the hallowed remnant of time which ought to relieve their fatigue and soothe their cares, the influences or inferences will have been anticipated that such a government is not a pattern for the United States. Blah, 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 blah. What is he saying? He's saying the government that we have today is not a pattern for the United States of America, not for people who want to live freely. That's what he's saying. Now, why did I want to go through all of that? I just threw a link in your show notes. So if you're on Twitch or if you're on Rumble, I just threw a link in there. That link is to a free page by Bastiat. And Frederick Bastiat wrote a book. It's called The Law. And it deals with property and just law. And it is a big expounding on what we just read from Madison. Property, 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 Joe. Yes, property. Who ordained property? Who invented it? Yahweh. God. What? Yes. Go read Genesis a little more closely. So it's a natural right to that property required to keep you alive. So the right to property that Google claims, Google's not a person. Google has a civil, positive right to whatever property it owns. But if it's a positive right made by the laws of that society has the authority to change that right anytime it pleases. Because it's the society that granted that right to begin with. You don't own a private corporation, folks. And Madison and Sam Adams just explained it to you. Did you hear the concepts, the thoughts? Do you understand logical extension? We covered that in class. You gotta be in class, folks. Gotta be there. We covered it. All of this is the foundation upon which our founding sits and rests. And it also explains why we're in such a mess. Because we no longer adhere to any of that. Now, if you read, or if you go back and reread Samuel Adams' essay, The Rights of the Colonists, you read it closely. Locke rests in the book of Romans. You will not properly understand the book of Romans if you do not understand the Tanakh, the Old Testament. Maybe there's a reason that James Madison said he found the three branches of our government in Isaiah chapter 33. I will be your king, your lawgiver, and your judge. Yahweh being all three. And then we're told that if you're not going to allow God to rule, you're going to end up under the sword of a tyrant. So if you're screaming liberty and you're claiming to be conservative and you want to live free again, I'm not telling you got to convert to Christianity, but I'm telling you better at least embrace the principles that are taught by the scriptures. Otherwise, it's not going to work. You're not going to get there. The only group of men to successfully start and finish a revolution that ended in liberty, all to a man, pointed to the Bible and to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and said, follow him. Do it his way. Every one. You will not find any of the 270-something people counted as a founding father that says contrary. Not one. I haven't. And I've looked for 30 years. I've read tens of thousands of the pages of their writing, and I have yet to find that. I was looking for it. Well, John Adams, he said that he hated religion. It made life hell. Keep reading. 2 lines later, he says this world would be hell without it. It's the only thing that saves us. Don't follow the scoffers who cherry pick to suit their purpose. Well, Adams wrote in that treaty that we're not a Christian nation. There are 11 copies of that treaty. The only one that says that is the one that was given to the Muslim leader, because that was the only way he'd sign it. They wrote it to appease his religious sentiments. The other 10 copies, the one that is in the United States records, does not have that language, because John Adams would never have said that or signed that. If you've read John Adams, you'd know that. Keep reading. If you want liberty, you're going to have to be like our founding fathers, very well educated. Alexis de Tocqueville, he came here, I think, in 1835. He spent a few years traveling the United States. He wanted to know what was the formula that made this country work. How was it that the founders were able to bring liberty to 5 million colonists in this great big land? One of the things he wrote in his book, I mean, that book's thick, Jack. One of the things he wrote is he was absolutely dumbstruck by the fact that he could go to any cabin in the frontier land and find a philosophical book of some sort that what today we would call classics, Homer, the Iliad, or the writings of John Locke. He found at least one book in every cabin in the frontier that kept the people philosophically engaged with the thinking of the time, the zeitgeist, as we like to say today. They were engaged. Bastiat said you could go into the beer houses, the pubs, and they were talking about the Constitution, what it meant, how it worked. The people knew and understood. So when Jefferson tells you where the people are properly educated, liberty is safe. Where the people are ignorant, hello, John Dewey, liberty is lost and tyranny reigns. Now you know why you're ignorant. You want your liberty back, you're going to have to start learning. You don't start learning by just reading the Constitution any more than if you want to be a good Christian, you start by just reading the Bible. The Constitution and the Bible will give you the basics. So you're going to be chewing tofu. It'll keep you alive. If you want to flavor it, you're going to have to go outside of both of them. You got to understand the thinking that was in the time. That's not in those books, those documents. You got to know the context. You got to know the zeitgeist. That's going to require you to go outside of those. You're going to have to read outside of the Constitution. You have to read outside of the Bible. It's not heresy. It's still the Constitution. It says what it says. Go understand what it means. What does it say and what does it really mean? Go to the people who explain it. Go to the spirit of the times. What are they dealing with? What are they arguing over? Study that. Study the language. The founders don't always use the words. You read some of the founding's words today, you go, oh, I know what that means. You better look that up in the 1828 dictionary. It might not mean what you think it means. They use language very precisely. Their language is like a scalpel. Today, we just kind of shotgun it. Hope you get the idea. I mean, we've read some of it. How many of the paragraphs on the quoting days when we were reading Jefferson were like 15 lines long? And it was one sentence. One 15 lines paragraph sentence, and it was properly punctuated and it made sense. I love reading Jefferson. He's made my English much better over the years. You've got to study. That's on you. It's a personal. Oh, there's that duty thing again, Joe. Yes. Didn't you just were you following along with me when I read Sam Adams, who said that if you want to live in a just society, you have a duty to it? You have a duty to everybody else's rights. You have a duty to pay your part to uphold that society. And you have a duty to oblige and abide by the rulings of the judges, the impartial judges that you've paid to settle matters between you and your neighbors. Duty. And if you want to live free, duty's going to be part of it. Read the Bible and you're going to find the exact same thing. Cain quips to God. He said, "What, am I my brother's keeper?" Yes, you are. That's why the Bible teaches you, hey, you got to do all these bad things to him if he's a thief. But then it turns around and tells you, but hey, man, if he's stealing to eat, show mercy. Well, wait a minute. I thought you told me if he's a thief. Understand the concepts. You have a duty to the man's life first. If he's alive and if he's got food to live and clothing that keeps him from dying from the elements, and if he steals more than he needed, not wanted, needed, now he's a thief. But if you want to punish him because he was taking what he needed to survive, then you're the one that was trampling on his right to life, even though it was your property. Oh my God, the Bible says I have a duty to others. Yes, it does. And the founding fathers said the exact same thing, even over your right to your property, because the duty to maintain life is a right that comes from the creator and belongs to him, and then that is given to you. So in other words, you have a duty to maintain your relationship with the creator for your rights, but since each and every one of us have the same rights, we've got a duty to maintain each and every other person's rights. Remember what they said, both of them, Madison and Sam Adams, they both said you have a right to these things, that do not trample those things with others. This is why I tell you that you can't call anything a right unless you have the ability or the authority to claim it and exercise it if you are alone on a deserted island. If you are all alone and there's not another person in the world and you're just in your clothes, boom, on the island, you're Gilligan that just showed up and the other six washed over the side of the boat. And the boat disappears and sinks right as you hit the island. That's what you have a right to. That's what you have a natural right to. And nothing else. Is there a hotel there? No. So he doesn't have a right to. Is there a doctor there? No. Hospital? No. Doesn't have a right to any of that. Those are positive rights. That's what Obama wants, which requires him to force you to take it, which if you go read, you will find progressives who say you will live and you will live well, whether it be against your will or not. That's George Bernard Shaw. He's a hero of the American Journalist Societies. Walter Lippmann. He's also a Fabian, which makes him a hero of all progressives. Obama's a progressive. Well, that doesn't mean he likes Bernard Shaw. He likes the ideas. His entire ideology is based on that. And they're going to force you to live and live well. That's the whole thing of the whole lives movement, the whole lives healthcare system that it is Obamacare. You're going to live and live well, whether you like it or not. We're going to force you to live the way we think you should live. Now, we're not going to abide by that because we live in Elysium. You're just the peasants. And the founders are saying that is an unjust government. They're laying the groundworks by which they can object to the tyranny over them. When I look around today, I do not see so-called American conservatives doing that. I see them itching, complaining, begging their tyrants to just hand them their liberty back. Oh, Mr. Tyrant, you succeeded in making me your slave. Please, master, just let me go free, please. When did that ever work? Unless the person had a religious conversion, when did that ever work? You want to get free from the slavery you're in, you're going to have to do it, first of all, according to natural law, which means lawfully, according to that lawgiver. So you better start studying the founding fathers because that's what they did. And I just showed you, I told you, they're setting the groundwork. They're doing it lawfully. So if you want to restore it, there's only one way you're going to do it. And you're going to have to start following the pattern and the example that was given to you. And that means you're going to have to start doing things you just don't want to do. So make your choice. Do you really want to be free again? Or is what you really want is just a few more comforts in your gilded cage? Because if that's the case, do what Sam Adams said. Go home, kneel down, lick the hand that feeds you. May his chains rest lightly on your shoulders. We're going to forget you wherever our countrymen. And posterity, all of our children, will suffer for it because we wouldn't bear the burden of keeping that which was bought in blood and handed to us freely. And we wouldn't bear the burden by so much as doing away with this program or that program and going to another. Oh, well, I can't go there because that's so much harder to use. Yeah, but they're setting them up an alternative economy so that you're not giving your money to the tyrants. Yeah, but it's not as easy. It's not as convenient. We're just going to beg the tyrants to do it our way. Yeah, the tyrant already has you in the cage and he's got your money. Why is he going to change? You've already proven to him that you'll just sit there and be itch. He can ignore you. He doesn't care. And then you cry because you don't get your liberty. Fornicating for chastity again. Jeez. Where have I seen that one before? That's an original thought. Yeah, I get a little tired of it because it's me too. Me too. I do it myself all the time. Catch myself all the time. But now I'm working at forcing myself to walk the walk. I'm working on it. Are you? Is the person in your mirror walking on it? Working on it? Eh, easy for me to say. Anyhow, enough of that. Monday, Manic Mondays, headlines. We might touch back on that prisoner exchange swap thing again. We'll look into a few things. I got some headlines there. We'll get some stuff together that's kind of cool. And, oh, wow. Gee, didn't see that one. We'll see what we find. Next Tuesday, still no idea. These things usually come to me the night before. Next Wednesday, I know what we're doing, though. Next Wednesday, I make people throw their sucker in the ground. So, next Thursday, we're probably going to, I don't know if we'll have more conspiracies or if we'll have a throwback. It might be time for me to go back and yell at Woodrow Wilson again or one of his buddies. But I know where we'll be next Friday. Right back here talking about the men that the founding fathers referenced outside of your more well-known sources, places that you that we've all pretty much know about, Locke and things like that. We're going to go to the other ones that they referenced a lot. Um, we just we're never told about it. We never hear about it. We don't pay attention to it. Whatever, for whatever reasons. Eh, you know, life. Got a football game to watch. Go Navy, beat Army. God, I can't believe I'm saying that, but the Marine Corps is under the Navy, so sucks to be me today. I got to go root for the squids. Hmm. How about you, though? We doing any good here? Y'all learning anything? Am I teaching anybody anything? Anything you find valuable? Hope so. I don't want to waste your time. But I've reached the point where I'm done. I'm ready to start teaching. Up until now, I've just been playing. I was asked to take the chocks off the throttle and open it up. Been in idle. Time to get it up to full military power. Time to start studying. Hey, I'm going to cut out a minute early. I thank each and every one of y'all for being here. Y'all stay safe. You have a good weekend. I'll see you Monday. Be in class.